Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're undertaking a really thrilling historical breakdown of one of the absolute most pivotal eras in all of Middle-earth's history. We're talking about the events covered in Of the Return of the Noldor. We're going to examine their shifting power dynamics, their bitter internal feuds, and of course, the explosive, world-shaping war they waged against the Dark Lord Morgoth. If you want to understand exactly how the board was set for the massive struggles of the Elder Days, you are in the right place. Let's get to it.
Okay, let's dive into this. We're beginning not with some glorious unified march, but with a sudden act of chaotic betrayal. Fëanor, the fierce leader of the Noldor, arrives on the shores of Middle-earth and immediately orders the burning of the swan ships. This massive conflagration was so bright it was actually seen by Morgoth's watchers in the north. And, even more tragically, it was seen by Fingolfin's host, Fëanor's very own kin, whom he deliberately abandoned on the other side of the sea. So right out of the gate, this fiery destruction establishes a cursed, deeply divided start for the returning elves.
Here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at Fëanor's war and death. Second, the rescue of Maedhros. Third, carving out new realms. Fourth, the glorious battle. And finally, the siege and the dragon.
Part 1. Fëanor's War and Death. The Hubris of the Exiles. So Fëanor's arrival was loud, reckless, and completely driven by a burning wrath that immediately plunged his people into warfare. And Morgoth? Well, he didn't wait around. Aroused by the sheer noise and the light of those burning ships, he sent his forces to ambush Fëanor's encampment at Mithrim before it was even fully defended. This initial clash became known as Dagor Nuin Gileath, the battle under stars, because the moon hadn't even risen yet. But Morgoth drastically miscalculated here. The Noldor were outnumbered and taken totally unawares, yet they were swiftly victorious. Why? Because the light of the blessed realm of Angband still burned brightly in their eyes. They were immensely strong, deadly in their anger, and wielding these long, terrible swords, they drove the orcs away with just massive slaughter.
But, victory often breeds a really dangerous kind of confidence. Consumed by the flame of his own wrath, Fëanor pressed on, hoping to confront Morgoth himself. He drew way ahead of his own army, totally blinded to the reality of Morgoth's defenses. Deep in enemy territory, Fëanor was ambushed by Balrogs. He fought them off alone for a long time, wrapped in fire, suffering multiple wounds, but he was ultimately struck down by Gothmog, the Lord of Balrogs. Though his sons managed to rescue him right before the final blow, Fëanor's wounds were mortal, and as he died, his spirit was so incredibly fiery that his physical body instantly fell to ash and was just blown away like smoke. It's a potent physical symbol of a fiercely destructive life.
Moving on to Part 2, the rescue of Maedhros and healing the rift.
Now, just as the sun rises for the very first time, Fingolfin's abandoned host finally arrives, and the tension between these two fractured factions is incredibly dangerous. Adding to this volatile situation, Fëanor's eldest son, Maedhros, has been lured into a trap by Morgoth under the guise of peace talks. Recognizing the unbreakable oath of the Noldor, Morgoth takes Maedhros alive as a cruel hostage. He literally hangs him by his right wrist from a sheer precipice on the impenetrable peaks of Thangorodrim, demanding the elves either forsake their war or leave Middle-earth entirely. Enter Fingon, the son of Fingolfin. Desperately seeking to heal the bitter feud between the Elven factions, Fingon sets out entirely alone to find his childhood friend, Maedhros. Using his harp, Fingon actually manages to locate him high up on the mountains, singing in torment. But the situation is horrific. Maedhros is in such agonizing, hopeless pain that he begs Fingon to shoot him with his bow. In utter despair, Fingon strings an arrow and utters this heartbreaking prayer to Manwë, the Lord of the Valar, pleading for some kind of pity.
I mean, just think about the sheer logistical nightmare of this for a second. Fingon is deep in enemy territory, staring straight up at a sheer cliff face, totally unable to reach his friend, and unable to break a hell-wrought steel band even if he could. How in the world do you save someone from the unassailable towers of a dark god? And this brilliantly illustrates what happens next, a miraculous intervention of grace. In direct response to Fingon's prayer, Thorondor, the king of eagles, a creature with a wingspan of 30 fathoms, swoops down from the high airs. He carries Fingon right up to the rock face. But even then, Fingon can't break the magical steel holding his friend. Forced to make a truly horrific choice to save Maedhros' life,
Fingon cuts off his right hand. Thorondr then bears them both back safely to Mithram. This daring rescue absolutely changes everything. Maedhros heals, actually learning to fight even more lethally with his left hand. But more importantly, his heart is changed. In profound gratitude and to beg forgiveness for his family's betrayal at Losgar, Maedhros completely waives his rightful claim to the kingship. He passes the overlordship of all the Noldor over to his uncle Fingolfin. By sacrificing his own pride, Maedhros heals the deep feud, allowing the elves to finally present a unified front.
Part 3. Carving out new realms. The elves settle Beleriand.
Now that the Noldor are actually united, we shift our focus to how they establish themselves geographically and politically in Beleriand to contain the shadow of Morgoth. Think of this as establishing the board for a very long war. The native elven king Thingol keeps his forest realm of Doriath restricted behind a magical girdle. Maedhros, wanting to keep his volatile brothers away from the rest of the family, deliberately takes the most dangerous, vulnerable eastern borders, the March of Maedhros, so he can take the brunt of any assault. Meanwhile, warned by dreams from the Valar, Finrod and Turgon begin searching for secret strongholds, which leads to the cavernous fortress of Nargothrond and the hidden vale of Tumladen. And out in the far east, the harsh Caranthir forms a highly profitable, if a bit frosty, tactical alliance with the dwarves, exchanging lore and enriching both peoples. Notice the beautiful cultural merger happening during this time too. The newly arrived Noldor and the native Sindar, or Grey Elves, really begin to blend. The Noldor bring their incredible architectural skills, their raw power, and their martial might. The Sindar, on the other hand, bring their superior music, their fair voices, and their deep, intimate knowledge of the woods. The Noldor even adopt the Sindarin language as their daily tongue. They're learning each other's strengths, becoming stronger together. Section 4, The Glorious Battle, United Against the Shadow.
So, the elves are fully entrenched, and Morgoth is about to put their preparation to the ultimate test. But right before that happens, 20 years after the sun first rose, Fingolfin hosts a massive festival at the pools of Ivren called Merith Aderathod, the Feast of Reuniting. Noldor, Sindar, and Green Elves all gather together. Oaths of friendship are sworn, and hope is just soaring. The elves truly believe they've contained the Dark Lord and that their flight to Middle-earth was completely justified.
But Morgoth is always watching. Seeking to catch them off guard, he unleashes earthquakes and rivers of flame, sending hordes of orcs pouring down through the mountain passes. But the elves' vigilance pays off big time. This clash, Dagor Aglareb, becomes known as the Glorious Battle. Fingolfin and Maedhros strike the main orc host from two sides simultaneously. They don't just repel them, they destroy them utterly, hunting them to the very gates of Angband. It's a stunning, totally decisive victory.
And finally, Part 5, The Siege and the Dragon, a fragile peace.
Let's move to And see how this builds across a vast multi-generational scale. Following the glorious battle, the Noldor set the Siege of Angband, effectively locking Morgoth inside his own fortress. This siege lasts nearly 400 years. A century in, Fingon easily crushes a minor flanking attempt. Another century later, a terrifying new weapon is tested, which we'll discuss in just a second. But essentially, for hundreds of years, the elves grow rich, they build towers, and they write their histories.
But here is the absolutely crucial point. The siege is flawed. Fingolfin boasts that Morgoth can never break out, but the elves can't actually capture Angband either. And critically, because of the impassable snow and ice of the Iron Mountains, they can't encircle Morgoth from the north. His back door is wide open. Spies slip out, sowing fear and gathering intelligence for centuries. Morgoth is trapped, sure, but he's learning, and he is breeding absolute horrors in the dark.
Which brings us to the year 200 of the siege. Out of Angband comes Glaurung, the very first of the Fire Drakes. Now, even though he's young and only half-grown, his sudden appearance absolutely terrifies the elves. Fingon reacts brilliantly, though, surrounding the beast with rings of swift horse archers. Glaurung's young armor just can't withstand the darts, and he flees back inside. The elves rejoice at yet another victory. But Morgoth is simply furious that his weapon was revealed way too early. He knows the dragon needs a lot more time to grow.
And this is the lingering dread we're left with today. The Noldor overcame immense betrayal, they healed their rifts, forged alliances, and clamped a lock on the greatest evil in the world. They enjoyed hundreds of years of the long peace, but looking at those unencircled mountains, knowing exactly what is incubating beneath them, we really have to ask, How long can a siege hold against an enemy who breeds immortal fire drakes in the dark? It's a chilling thought for sure, and one that sets the perfect stage for the inevitable shattering of this golden age. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll catch you in the next one.